And a very happy Friday to you at 12:09 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, Paul Krikorian has had it up to here with people interrupting Kevin De Leon during his nonsensical, pointless proclamations that he does every single city council meeting. Would you like to hear what happened?
Let's hear it.
Lastly, Mr. President, I have the honor.
Did he just shush somebody?
What are they, in a library?
I have the honor to also recognize a delegation.
One moment, Mr. De Leon, please. To the members of our audience here, there will be no disruptions of the meeting. The two people standing in the back of the room, you will not shout out when a council member is speaking. You will not shout out and disturb this meeting under any circumstances, no matter how important the thing is that you think you want to shout out, you think is.
Well, saying FKDL is very important.
And you will be excluded from this meeting if you continue to disrupt. Mr. Graebner, I am not going to warn you again. Be quiet throughout this meeting unless you're standing at that podium speaking into the microphone. There will be no disruptions of this meeting. That's the only warning I'm giving any of you. Mr. De Leon, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Here it
again,
comes.
colleagues, it's with great pleasure that... Again, let me start once again. It's with great pleasure that I introduce a delegation from, not from Peru, but from...
I'm sorry, Mr. De Leon. Sergeant...
Like clockwork.
Although I think part of me thinks that at least Paul Krikorian might enjoy just a little bit that he's also interrupting KDL from these pointless proclamations.
Sergeant, is that Mr. Graebner speaking out after I just warned him? Mr. Graebner, you're ordered removed from the meeting pursuant to Rule 12. You'll be subject to Rule 7. For everyone else who's here, there will be no disruptions of this meeting. Period. Full stop.
Well, guess what? I bet you're wrong.
That's all we have so far, but the meeting is still going on. I'm sure we're going to get something else.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Now, Randy, this is a secular radio station, and we do not get religious on this show. If you want religion on the radio, there are plenty of radio stations that can provide that to you, some of them in English. But today I'm going to take a break from our secular nature because we need to talk about the Almighty for a second. Are you ready to talk about the Almighty?
Let's do it.
Okay. You cannot piss the Almighty off one too many times without being punished. And I think we've done that. What year was it that the Dodgers moved to Los Angeles from Brooklyn?
1957? 1955? Something like that.
Okay. It was the O'Malleys and Roz Wyman on the LA City Council that moved the Dodgers from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. They moved here in, let's say, what, the late 50s? We'll go with that number. Okay. So we've had over 50 years, well over 50 years, 60 years, something like that the Dodgers have been in Los Angeles playing baseball. We've had some close calls at that stadium. They played during the LA riots and kept the city entertained when race relations were at their lowest. We had a hippie who tried to throw a flag on the field, and that was saved by the boys in blue. We've had ups, we've had downs. We won the World Series in 1988, and we've had seasons without a winning record. But never, ever, in the history of this franchise, whether it be in Los Angeles or in Brooklyn, have we ever asked the fake doctor to throw out a first pitch.
Yeah.
And then they had to break the streak, and they had to do it, and now we're all being punished. Because for the first time in my life, after the fake doctor was given the ability to throw out the first pitch, we're going to take a direct hit from a hurricane.
That's right. Hurricane Hillary is coming to town this weekend and might bring 4 to 10 years worth of rain in one weekend.
This is punishment from the Almighty for allowing this to happen.
No, thank you.
Now, I want everyone in town to take very close notes at what's about to happen. Because if you're the Lakers, if you're the Clippers, if you're the Chargers, if you're the Rams, if you're the Kings, if you're the Ducks, if you're the Angels, if you're soccer, if you're WrestleMania, I don't care what it is. But if you're thinking about asking this woman to sing the national anthem at your event, we're all going to get hit by an asteroid. When's the last time the state of California has been hit by a hurricane?
I think it's been at least 30 years.
That's right. When God talks to you, you need to listen.
No, thank you.
Now, what's weird about this storm, Randy, is that usually it's the media that's hyping all the death and the destruction and the biblical nature of the rain. But it seems like the news media is quite tempered in their coverage, but it's the meteorologists who are all a bunch of hysterics.
Well, this is when they get the most screen time. And since most people who work in the broadcast journalism business, myself included, are narcissists, whenever you get to go on for more than 30 seconds at a time, it's your favorite time of year.
See, and that's why I don't know if I should believe them. Because this is what happened with all of those quote-unquote public health experts, like the fake doctor.
Yeah.
The more they say that COVID's trying to kill you, the more airtime they get. There's only 30 minutes in a newscast. You have to pick and choose which stories you put on. If COVID's not that big of a deal, you don't put the fake doctor on. You put on the water skiing squirrel or something else.
If Ron Lynn reported the actual COVID numbers, he wouldn't be on page 1 of the LA Times. He'd be on page 10.
That's right. So now all the meteorologists are saying that we are going to essentially be living in the lost city of Atlantis. Is that because what they're saying is true and the information they're giving us is accurate? Or does Sam Champion just want a little more FaceTime? I'm not quite sure. What I do know is this. The power goes out whenever you use the hair blow dryer in this state. If we take on that much water, we're all going to be sitting in the dark without AC. That much I know. We have how many different live sporting events going on this weekend?
Oh, we've got quite a bit. There are Dodger games, Angel games, and Padres games that all might get rained out on Sunday because of this storm.
Think about this for a second. The Angels and Dodgers very rarely play home games at the same time. Major League Baseball is very careful to make sure if the Angels have a home game, the Dodgers are on the road, because why do you want to compete with yourself? But this weekend, there was a quirk in the schedule where both the Dodgers and the Angels are playing home games at the same time. Here's what's weird. It's officially hurricane season over in Florida, and in Florida, they're fine. But the Dodgers are playing who this weekend?
They're playing the Florida Marlins.
And the Angels are playing who?
The Tampa Bay Rays.
That's right. They escaped hurricane season in the state of Florida to come to the very safe Pacific coast and play in the state of California where hurricanes aren't a thing. They leave Florida, they come here, and all of a sudden Hillary is heading right for us. I'm telling you, it's the fake doctor.
Yeah.
We should get an astrologer on the show or something. I don't know.
By the way, I just saw a tweet from the LA County Department of Public Health. They canceled this for Sunday because of the rain, but apparently today, tomorrow, and it was going to be Sunday as well, for LA County Day at Dodger Stadium, the Department of Public Health is going to have a CPR training class. Do you think Barbara Ferrer is going to be teaching you CPR?
Well, if she does, they might as well do it in the LA River because that's where the homeless are all going to get picked up by the water.
No, thank you.
Don't even need a dummy.
No. And by the way, she's going to cancel throwing out that first pitch. I don't think she's going to go through with it. First of all, there's a strong chance the game is going to cancel anyway due to rain and lightning. Second of all, if people are being flooded out of the river and into the ocean, and your public health director is not tending to that and is instead throwing out the first pitch at a baseball game, that's what you call bad optics. And I think even for her, as clueless as she is, she understands that's not going to look good in the papers. So I predict she's not even going to throw the first pitch out.
I hope you're wrong, because we've got so many people going to that game just to boo her.
Oh, we've been getting email after email after email. We're doing more to move LA Dodger tickets than the ads on 570. I think half of that audience is going to be our people. And if I didn't have tickets to the Angel game, I'd be going to Dodger Stadium myself. So we'll see what happens with the storm, with the floods. Again, right now, Hurricane Hillary. And, of course, if anything is going to knock out my power and make me live in misery, it's going to be named after her. When did they decide the names of these?
Well, they go in alphabetical order, so this is after the G one, and I think they picked the names at random.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if it's Hurricane Hillary, I can tell you it's going to destroy a bunch of computer servers when it hits land.
You know what would be a very smart thing for everybody listening to do this weekend? Make sure that your homeowner's insurance company didn't cancel you.
Oh, they were trying to drop us before they even thought of the possibility that a hurricane could hit. That was back in the day when they thought it was just fires and earthquakes. Now you add a new one into the mix?
Farmers, don't cancel me tomorrow, please.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
We got an email from Maria overnight. She actually came into contact with Mayor Karen Bass, and she said Karen Bass gave her some life advice. If life is boring, if life is drab, just go do a smash and grab.
That sounds like Mayor Mother Goose.
If you're feeling down, if you're feeling blue, let's get help for you.
Speaking of the smash and grabs, yesterday we took calls from people who work in retail. We asked them the question, how often they get robbed, and you'll be surprised to hear the answers. If you missed yesterday's show, Randy, it's easy to go back and hear it in the podcast edition.
That's right. Go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can also search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube. In fact, if you search for the term George Gascon on YouTube and filter by date, the first thing you'll see is yesterday's podcast titled George Gascon Gets Bitchy with Reporters.
Quite frankly.
So please download and share it with everybody.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Let's do it right now. 790 KABC welcomes Daryl Hall with special guest Todd Rundgren at the Pantages Theater on November 6th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Nederlander Concerts. Good luck dialing.
Now, Randy, during the break, a little birdie told me we have a new song to debut.
Well, since we are in anticipation of Barbara Ferrer throwing out the first pitch this Sunday at 12:40 in the afternoon at Dodger Stadium, we've been digging into the past of Barbara Ferrer, and it turns out before she was ever director of public health, she sang backup vocals for a number of different artists. And it turns out, at one point, she was even backing up Michael Jackson. Yeah.
Was that the song where he kept grabbing his crotch?
That was most of them.
It's 12:29. Let's take a look at all the latest headlines. The Fix California Hour coming up after the news at 1. Make sure you stick around for that. Randy, we don't like to do I told you so's all of the time, but today we're going to have to spike the football on something.
Oh, you're so optimistic.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the founder and chief executive officer of Florida's Voice. You can follow him on Twitter at FL Voice News, Florida Voice News. Brendan Leslie. Brendan, thanks so much for stopping by.
I appreciate you for having me.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this debate that's going to happen between your governor in the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, and our governor here in North Korea, Gavin Newsom. A lot of people are trying to figure out why Ron DeSantis agreed to do this debate while on Sean Hannity's program on Fox News. Now, I say that fully understanding why Gavin Newsom did it. Gavin Newsom is an unyielding narcissist who would take his vacation to New York City so he could camp out behind the set of the Today Show if that's what it took to be on television. But DeSantis, he's a presidential candidate. He can do any show he wants to do. Why is he going to debate Gavin Newsom?
Well, it's symbolic in many ways that you're looking at the two, whether you like it or not. Gavin Newsom is the future of the Democratic Party on the national stage, and Ron DeSantis is also viewed as the future of the Republican Party, whether it be in 24 and 28. As to why Ron's campaign would think it's a good idea, listen, in order to take down Donald Trump in the 2024 primary, you have to move mountains, and you have to be the talk of the town. To be the man, you got to take down the man. And what better way than to beat Donald Trump at his game, which is controlling the headlines, than to have a private, probably the most highest viewed and rated political debate in American history between Gavin Newsom. That would be one of the most viewed televised debates in political history in America. And it's going to be the talk of the town for the month of November when they're planning on doing it. So in my mind, I think the strategy is dominate the headlines and give Ron something to continue to build his momentum as we get closer and closer to that first primary in Iowa.
It really is interesting how Florida seems to be the petri dish right now of conservative ideas, Republican ideas, how a large state with big cities and rural areas and suburbs and resort towns would look if a Republican could do what they want to do with it. And California is the reverse. California is a big state with all of those same sorts of communities, and the Democrats control everything. And they get to do whatever they want to do. And if you put them in charge of everything, California is how the country would look.
Yeah, and it's quite amazing how Florida continues to get all the bad press. Like California just get on by. Things are doing well in Florida. Yeah, the housing market is going up higher, but that's because it's just such a huge influx of, natural supply and demand. So many people are trying to come here. But overall, Florida is seeing over and over the benefits of conservative fiscal policies, whether it be the Hurricane Ian response and being able to get bridges up really quick, being able to the state legislature had such a big budget surplus that they were able to pick up the tab in Southwest Florida that FEMA would not pay for, meaning those taxpayers on the county level, those taxes are not going up, despite going through the storm of the century that caused billions of dollars in damages. Florida is number one in higher education. Name a college as good as FSU or that's as affordable as FSU and will give you as good of a quality of education. I mean, Florida, I could just keep going on and on and on, leads the way. And to your point, Republicans control everything. It's the first time since 1863 that there's no statewide Democrat in the state of Florida. It's quite wild what's happening down here, but that's why we're getting so much negative press, and California does it because you can't highlight the goodness that is Florida, because then it might start waking up people across the nation.
Let's go back to Newsom's motivations for participating in this debate for a second, because if you talk about crime, there's no comparison between California and Florida right now. If you talk about homelessness, I think it's 1 out of 3 homeless people in the nation live in California, even though we represent 11% of the total population. COVID lockdowns, education, whatever the case may be, California is struggling right now. And part of the reason that we're struggling is because Gavin Newsom gets everything he wants in Sacramento, and he has a lot of bad ideas. I don't necessarily think he wants to go toe-to-toe with Florida on all of those subjects, because he won't come out of that debate looking good. To my eye, what Gavin Newsom is trying to do is send a message to Democratic voters that he can go toe-to-toe with Ron DeSantis for an hour and a half on Fox News with Sean Hannity as the moderator, with the understanding that Joe Biden doesn't have the ability to do that, with the understanding that Kamala Harris doesn't have the ability to do that. He doesn't have to win the debate. He doesn't have to prove that California is better in all of these categories than the state of Florida. He just has to hang in there for 90 minutes to tell Democratic voters that he would be a better nominee than Joe Biden or Kamala Harris.
Yep. If you ask my friend Tommy Lahren, I was just talking to her about this very subject on her show, and she, you know her, she's no big fan of Gavin Newsom. She says all the time that there's no way that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee for 2024. She wholeheartedly believes that Gavin Newsom is going to slither his way in last second. It almost makes sense, because all of a sudden Hunter Biden and all these scandals of Joe Biden are being held accountable. Maybe the Democrats are trying to prop him up so that they can slide him in. And you're completely right. He doesn't need to prove that California is better. He just needs to go along with all the talking points, seem charismatic, seem like he's high energy, and be quick on his feet. That's it. That's all he has to do. He doesn't have to beat Ron DeSantis. It's, when you look at it, it's polar opposites for both of them. For Gavin, he doesn't need to beat Ron. He just needs to do what you said. And for Ron, he needs to beat Gavin. Like, he needs to continue that momentum. So it's a really interesting time in our politics right now, and I would not be surprised if something changes between now and January to get Gavin in there at last second.
What kind of debater is Ron DeSantis? And I say that because I see him on Fox. I hear him on various talk radio programs. I saw him on CNN recently. I think he did a sit-down with Jake Tapper. But that's the first adversarial interview I've seen him give in a long time. You don't see him pop up on Morning Joe or CNN or any of the network programs all that often. What type of debater is he when he's in a hostile environment?
If you want my honest opinion, he's not a good one. He wasn't good in 2018, and then most recently he debated Charlie Crist for the gubernatorial debate. Now, I give him some slack because that was right. It was about a month after Hurricane Ian. That dude was working every single day, 18-hour days. So maybe he was tired, but I mean, he just came off awkward. He had in between when he wasn't talking, he didn't have a good face on. So people were mocking that. And I mean, his performance was okay. That's about it. Okay. What saved him is that he is very intelligent. He knows how to break down the issues, and he's very good about talking about his record and all his wins, and then also laying out his plans for the future and his future wins that he hopes to deliver on. So he's really good in that aspect, but he kind of comes off as like a little mean, a little awkward, needs to kind of work on his personable stuff, and that's probably the big trait against him. And but again, I give him a little slack because it was right around Hurricane Ian, and I'm sure that his debate prep has been coaching him on just being, coming off as a little bit more less condescending and just here's the record, here's what I plan to do, and this is why I'm the best guy for the job.
You know who he kind of reminds me of in this context, and I don't say this to be insulting, but I do believe it to be true. He reminds me a little bit of Al Gore, because when Al Gore was going up against George W. Bush in 2000, He had that debate performance where he was constantly rolling his eyes, constantly making funny noises and making funny faces when George W. Bush was speaking. And he got mocked on Saturday Night Live back when they mocked Democrats and got made fun of on all the late night shows. And his staff sat him down and they showed him all of the mockery of his performance. And then he came on the next debate and he looked like he had a lobotomy. He was trying very difficult to be stiff. He was trying very hard not to have any kind of facial reaction or audible reaction. They really got in his head, and the people around him did him a disservice. They shouldn't have told him to have no reaction. They should have just told him to be natural. And if that's the way you naturally are, well, then the voters are going to have to accept you or not accept you. I see Ron DeSantis as probably being the smartest one in that field. If you were to just quiz them on the public policy aspects of whatever their platform is, he's a very smart guy. He served in the federal government. He served in the state government. He's been very successful as a governor, very successful as a congressman. But for whatever reason, the people around him think that he's not likable or he has a likability problem. And because of that, they keep him off Good Morning America. They keep him off the Today Show. They keep him off the Sunday shows. They keep him off all of these programs where I think he would do just fine if they let him go on there and talk to these people. Do you feel the same way I do, that he should be going outside of the Fox bubble, outside of the talk radio bubble, and talk to some of these other people on these other channels?
Yeah, yes, he didn't have the greatest of performances against Charlie Crist, but he has done a couple adversarial type interviews recently. And honestly, I think Ron DeSantis is at his best when he's able to just clap back at a reporter and give them the facts when they're clearly pushing a partisan question. It just happened recently. He was in front of the Never Back Down bus in Iowa, and a reporter asked him about Kamala Harris talking points when it came to the Black History curriculum fake scandal that they tried to push in the media. And he just instantly was like, nope. Here's why, X, Y, and Z, you're wrong. Here are the facts. And he did the same when it came to the Don't Say Gay bill, where he was like, hey, does it say that in the bill? Does it say don't say gay? Those are the moments where Ron DeSantis shines. He just needs to tread a little carefully and make sure he's not coming off as like a brute, but he's coming off as someone who's holding his ground and is incredibly intelligent. So I think he should do more of those interviews, because I truly think that's the moments where he shines. And it's just such a fine line to walk. It sucks today in politics. A lot of voters decide who they're voting for based on if they like you, will they have a beer with you. And Ron DeSantis was that guy in Florida when he was campaigning. So I can't wait to see it to start translating on the national stage, because once it does, if it does, that's when Ron DeSantis is at his best and has a real chance.
See, I think you're 100% right. They should just let him be himself. When you look at these presidential elections, it seems like whenever voters elect a new president, they elect someone to fill the void, fill the deficiencies of the person who was there before them. Bill Clinton had no morals, so we elected George W. Bush, who was a religious man, not terribly bright, but a religious man who you knew was faithful to his wife and loved his kids. After 8 years of him, the public decided, okay, he's too dumb to be president. Let's elect a college professor. After 8 years of being lectured by the college professor, Barack Obama, we decided to go for a disruptor in Donald Trump. When people thought that Donald Trump was too crass for the country, they decided to go to a guy who they thought would be a unifier in Joe Biden, and it turns out the guy is incompetent. If voters decide to go in a different direction, I think competency this time around, more than anything, will sell, because that will fill the void. That will fill the dysfunction or fix the dysfunction of the Biden administration.
Yep, and DeSantis' campaign really does have a good platform to run on when it comes against Trump. It's like, hey, here are all these promises you made and you didn't fulfill on. Here's all the promises I made and then I over-delivered on. But for some reason, that messaging, for whatever it may be, hasn't been sticking on the national level. So I don't even know if at this point if DeSantis can get past Trump. But it has to be the unifying message for Republicans when it's all said and done. After the primary is over and we have our nominee, is that Biden is the most incompetent person in the world. But to his credit, what he's doing brilliantly, well, I should say his team, because we all know he's just a walking corpse, They have somehow tricked the masses into thinking the economy is not that bad. By definition, we are in a recession right now, but they have somehow changed the narrative where, oh, we're not in a recession, even though GDP has been negative growth for several quarters in a row. So, I mean, it's going to be a tough battle for Republicans in 2024, despite Joe Biden being so incompetent.
Brendan Leslie, founder and chief executive officer of Florida's Voice. You can follow him on Twitter at Brendan Leslie, and also follow Florida Voice News at FL Voice News on Twitter. Thanks so much for stopping by, and have a great weekend.
I appreciate it, and good luck in California.
Thank you. You know what just occurred to me, Randy?
What's that?
If this song was anything other than Come Monday, if it was Come Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, he could have sang a duet with Cecily Myart Cruz.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Just doesn't have the same ring to it, though, does it?
Different cadence, I'll say that. Now, here's a question. Since it is Jimmy Buffett Friday, Jimmy Buffett has been entertaining audiences for decades now. Very successful, not just as a singer, but as a writer of both fact and fiction. The man is an institution. Has he ever done any duets or ever sang any songs with Barbara Ferrer singing backup?
Not that I know of, but we still have 2 hours to go.
Okay, now this audience, this is a radio audience, so they not only like the spoken word, they also like music. Many of you are also big Parrot Heads and Jimmy Buffett fans. If you have the ability to look through your records and see if there are any Jimmy Buffett albums where Barbara Ferrer sang backup, we would love to hear from you at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com.
I'm sure we can come up with something. I believe in you.
Well, he's been singing for a long time. She's been singing for a long time. She sang with Grammy winners and best-selling artists. At some point, their paths had to have crossed.
It's definitely possible.
All right, we've got 2 more hours coming up on the John Phillips Show. The Fix California Hour is next. This is Talk Radio 790 KABC.
Yeah.